Welcome back to Inside City Hall. As we have been reporting today at City Hall, Mayor Bloomberg called for Congress to improve existing gun laws and crack down on background checks. But do events like this, along with some tough talk for unions and Albany legislators and his State of the City address, actually help his honor rehabilitate his image after weeks of criticism following the Christmas blizzard? Here to discuss that question and more are the four members of our Consultants Corner. We've got Republicans Kellyanne Conway and Jonathan Greenspun, and Democrats Scott Levinson and Richard Fife. Thanks for for coming in, to all of you. Let's get right to the state of the city. It's about a week ago now, so it's getting a little old, but you all haven't weighed in on it. So let's get your grades. How did the mayor do? We'll start with you, Kellyanne.
Thank you, Errol. I give the mayor a B. It's lacking in any new bold initiatives. I think that the otherwise sort of gregarious mayor is really playing it safe, having been bitten and not smitten over the snow upheaval. But I did like the fact that he's willing to take on the unions and take on Albany. It reminds you of Chris Christie, much more popular over on the other side of the river, who is taking on the unions there and taking on Trenton. I think that most New Yorkers should be able to nod their head in some type of agreement there. But I'd hate for this mayor to really play it safe for the end of his tenure, and to think that he is now in defensive mode and just trying to, as you say, rehabilitate his image rather than get us out of this $10 billion budget deficit. And, we just heard today that Albany's going to maybe cut the funding by $1 billion. So
we'll know more about that next week, as a matter of fact. Your grade, Scott.
I gave him a C, and I disagree with Kellyanne. I think the mayor continues to show this lack of sensitivity, or this sense that he's out of touch with the people of our city. One is this reaction to the snowstorm that doesn't just fall around the way the snowstorm was managed, but this whole self-righteous indignation about having to explain where he was rings tone deaf to most New Yorkers who, as civil servants, if they work for the city or if they just have a boss, feel like they need to tell the guy who writes their paycheck where they are, and the mayor just feels exempt from that. So I think he continually sounds like he's just not in touch with the people of New York. And the war on the public sector unions is, I think, one more example of this. People are looking for a shared burden in these difficult economic times, and all we're hearing about is one side of the equation. There's no revenue side of this discussion. I think the mayor's obligated to raise that.
Okay, and to be fair, he's not the only one who's talking about it, and It's going to be a big issue all across the board. Jonathan Greenspun.
I gave him a B+, along the lines of what Kellyanne said. I thought last year's was an A+. I thought he had a lot of substance there. We heard some repeats of last year's and this year's speech. I disagree with Scott. I like talking tough to the unions. I thought that was probably the thing that people most remember about the speech and talked about. And again, you're right that Governor Cuomo seems to be reading off the same piece of sheet music as well. But it lacked one sort of big idea. Now, big ideas don't have to come in a State of the City address. They can always come throughout the third term. You have to wait and see, but I gave him a B+.
Well, I got to tell you, as a Brooklynite, I think that idea of outer borough hails for taxis is a really big idea. I think I'm the only one who seems to think that.
Well, it's interesting. That's the one that they leave.
But people who live in the outer boroughs have been hailing livery cabs for
but now it would
half
be
a
legal.
But they've been doing it. But this is another example of it seems so out of touch. It was a throwball to the outer boroughs, but people have been doing it
Your
for
point's
years.
Well taken, though, because a lot of council members in the outer boroughs have actually been talking about TLC crackdowns on illegal hails, and if it's legal, there's nothing to talk about.
You want to throw a goodie to the outer borough? I'm willing to catch it.
Okay.
Richie Fife.
In this atmosphere of civility, I gave it a B, just like Kellyanne. I agree with her that he laid out a vision of how to manage a city, no new taxes, but he lacked anything bold. And also, I think he had to address the snowstorm. It's my rule of communications, you have to admit the obvious. And it was sitting out there, and if you think back to when John Lindsay was mayor, David Garth, who gave me my start in politics, did this famous commercial with John Lindsay, where he said, after the snowstorm when people were mad, he said, I made a mistake on the snowstorm, but I did right about this, this, and this. And I think the mayor, with this big setting, soon after the snowstorm, and it was on people's minds, was wrong to ignore it and not deal with it and not say, look, we messed up, but we got it right, and that's a good awakening, and we're going to keep at it. And
of course, one big difference is Lindsay in '69 was running for re-election, so
exactly.
he had to say something.
But the same way, you want to push forward and to get people to deal with it, and as Scott says, to show you're in touch with people and not ignore it, I think was a missed opportunity for him.
Let's talk about somebody else who's trying to get in touch with people. That, of course, is the President of the United States. Big State of the Union address tomorrow. These days, he seems to be riding a centrist wave based on the successes that the legislative successes he enjoyed during the lame duck session. Does he continue and extend that, or how does he now deal with a hostile Republican Congress?
I liked the question until the last part. Do you mean that they actually want to oppose some of the ridiculous things that he tried to do in the first 2 years that were rebuffed at the polls by having 63 new members? Sure. If that makes them hostile.
We're not expecting him to talk about repealing the health care.
I think he's pretty hostile,
law,
calling
right?
them hostage takers, only a month ago. But I fully expect Barack Obama to run for re-election in 2012. I'm just shocked that he might do it as a Republican. I mean, he is talking recently to the right of George W. Bush. Had George W. Bush been a little bit more conservative on certain things like spending, people like me would have been happy in Social Security reform. I think this president is going to throw bones to everyone tomorrow night. I think there will be things to make the progressives happy and make them feel like this guy is the man they elected 2 years ago, whom they have not seen him be for quite a while now. And I think he's going to say enough that a conciliatory Republican Congress will be able to nod in agreement. I don't expect there to be bold initiatives. I think that nobody's ever under oath when they deliver their State of the Union addresses, so they're never held to account. It ends up being a laundry list, stringing together feel-good phraseology, not very deep in ideology. But this guy is running for re-election. Let's all remind ourselves that. He is a presidential candidate first now and a president second.
But I think it is important not to just make it a laundry list, to make it an agenda setting, and it is, well, whether it is for the rest of the year or for re-election. So you're not just looking at what the overnight reviews are, but look towards what are you doing to set up your legislative agenda and your campaign. And so in that way, I think he'd be well served not just to do the safe stuff of outlining his vision for jobs and investment, which he will do and I think is important, and continue his speech that he set out in Tucson, but also to take on some issue, a controversial issue, perhaps as go way against conventional wisdom, like the mayor said, and address the gun control in terms of restoring the ban on the extended clips or and stuff, and show to the liberal followers that he's willing to stand up for something and to take some heat on an issue. And I think doing both of those would set him off well.
Okay, they think something will be thrown to the progressives. Do you think it'll be gun control or something else?
Listen, I think everybody's going to be looking for their takeaways from this, but what the president's been most consistent on is his tone. This tacking to the middle is reflective of the tone of our nation, and when compared to the opposition voices, which is far more divisive, his tone has been consistently conciliatory and bringing our nation together. And when it's in pain, as it is now, that's what people are looking for from a leader of our nation. I think that's what they're going to get
pain, you mean 10%
tomorrow with the president.
unemployment, I hope.
Listen, if you're going to put all the economic problems with our country on Barack Obama's
say
head
that,
after
but,
2 years,
I mean, you
well,
know
that's
what?
the point.
He's not there to
so
be the
yes,
killer in
is
chief.
unemployment one of the things that you have to look at? Sure.
Well, he's got to talk about jobs. He's got to talk about getting out of the getting us moving in terms of job creation. I think you get a lot of that. I think the bone to the left will be in defense of health care, and he's going to win some points on that with the left. But clearly, he's riding somewhat of a wave right now, right? He had that great lame duck and came out after the Gifford shooting as looking presidential again and reminding everybody about why he was elected. He needs to continue to ride that wave. I think everybody sitting, Republicans and Democrats sitting together, will be interesting because we all know there's a tradition of standing up when you like something and sitting on your hands when you don't, and now everybody's going to be sitting next to each other as opposed to one side. I think that's going to make for some interesting. It's going to make some interesting political.
Yeah, but it's a great message and that's consistent with what Barack Obama has been saying.
Oh, I think it's a great idea.
Well,
that
I'll tell
they
you,
sit together.
everybody covering it is going to have to be on their toes because it won't be obvious what's going on in that chamber. It's going to be the last word. Thanks so much for coming in, Kellyanne, Jonathan. Good to see you, Richie Fife, and Scott Levinson. It's time for a break. I'll be back with a preview of tomorrow night's program, including our special coverage of the State of the Union address. Stay with us.